Well, Colonel Richard Kemp is a distinguished commander who led British forces in Afghanistan and Iraq. He has in-depth experience dealing with the threat of terror. I'm pleased to say he joins me here in Jerusalem. Now, first of all, before we get on to Hezbollah, I want to ask you about the Palestinian visa issue I've been speaking about, how the Albanese government has issued nearly 3,000 visas to Gazans without adequate security vetting. What do you think about this?
I think it's absolutely shocking. The first duty of any government is to protect its people, and clearly the Australian government in this case is betraying its people. Who do they think is going to get out of Gaza? It takes a lot of money to get out of Gaza today, and the people with money in Gaza are the people connected to Hamas. So you can guarantee, I would suggest, that the majority of those people, possibly all of them, are going to have Hamas connections and probably Hamas sympathies, and therefore they will potentially, at least some of them, will endanger citizens within Australia.
And even without that, I mean, we're seeing such extraordinary levels of hatred, of violence, of anti-Semitism. The idea of importing the conflicts from here to peaceful Australia is shocking.
Exactly, and we're seeing that the world over. We're seeing it in Britain as well as in Australia and other countries around the world, where people who have sympathy, they don't care about democracy, they don't care about peace, they have sympathy with terrorists, and they are intimidating Jewish populations because of their affinity themselves with Israel.
Yes. Now, I want to talk to you about the news overnight. Basically, Hezbollah has been beaten into submission. It's now calling for a ceasefire without Israel moving away from Gaza, which is a huge development, isn't it?
It shows the immense damage that the Israelis have done to Hezbollah, even just in the last few days, but certainly over the last year. They've been hitting Hezbollah very hard in Southern Lebanon in particular, but also in Beirut, ever since Hezbollah began its war of aggression against Israel on the 8th of October last year. And they've effectively decapitated Hezbollah. They've taken out the leader of Hezbollah, Nasrallah. They've taken out many of the other senior leaders. And I think in this case, I've never seen such a widespread and effective campaign of attack against leadership of an enemy force. I think Prime Minister Netanyahu here is rewriting the book on targeted warfare.
Yeah, it's been utterly extraordinary. There's now debate and it seems like disagreement between the United States and Israel about exactly what the retaliation strikes against Iran should look like. Do you think Israel should be targeting the nuclear sites to stop Iran developing nuclear weapons?
Israel certainly should do that. Whether now is the time or not is an open question, because, of course, to do the maximum damage to Iran's nuclear program, it does need military support from the US. It can do damage, and I think it should try and do some damage. But there are other targets as well that can be hit, and those include energy installations like oil and gas. They include military bases, military facilities and capabilities. And all of these should be among the target range that Israel chooses. Whatever they decide to hit, they should hit them very, very hard. Last April, after Iran fired about 300 plus missiles and drones at Israel, Israel responded with a light touch. It didn't have the right effect because we saw a repetition.
Exactly.
Not at all. So now they've got to deter, and they've got to hit them, in my view, very, very hard indeed.
There doesn't seem to be the appetite from international leadership, whether it's Joe Biden in the United States and his VP Kamala Harris, whether it's in Britain, in France, in Germany, Canada, Australia. What's your comment on the international leadership we're seeing at the moment in the face of this very real terror threat?
The leaders in these Western countries understand the threat. They know that Israel's doing the right thing. They're just afraid of a country standing up for itself. They've forgotten how a country needs to stand up for itself to survive. It hasn't been a problem for most of these countries for so many years. And their priority now is to appease the anti-Israel mobs, who are in the minority in our countries, but they're a loud and vocal minority, and they want to appease them, and particularly so in the United States, where the election is coming up.